You can learn a lot about a person by the way they start pulling away from you. It's not always loud. Most of the time, it's quiet. So quiet that at first, you think you're imagining things. But I wasn't. Before everything went sideways, Kelly and I had what most people would call a stable relationship. Not overly romantic, not some movie script passion, but solid. We met through mutual friends, moved in together after 2 years, and settled into what felt like a shared rhythm. She was bright, witty, and had this charm that drew people in without even trying. And I was the type to keep things steady, a provider, a builder, someone who didn't just say I got you, but actually lived it. We didn't have a lavish life, but we were comfortable. I worked long hours as a systems consultant, pulling decent money and covering the majority of the bills. Kelly had a remote job, part-time, flexible. I never once complained about the imbalance. That was our agreement. I took care of the bigger responsibilities so she could breathe a little more, focus on her passions, maybe grow her side business. At least that's what I thought we were doing. But the first cracks weren't financial. They were emotional. It started subtly. Fewer hugs, quicker goodbyes. When I got home, I used to get a kiss on the cheek, a little smile, sometimes a plate already on the table. Lately, she'd barely look up from her phone. I'd ask about her day, and she'd respond with a shrug or a distracted, "It was okay." Then silence. One night, I reached out to touch her leg under the blanket while we were watching a movie, something simple, familiar. She shifted away like my hand was a nuisance. Didn't say anything, just moved, like affection had become a chore she was trying to avoid. That moment stuck with me more than I wanted to admit. At first, I tried not to overthink it. We all have off days, right? I told myself maybe she was tired, preoccupied, or just not in the mood. I tried again a few days later, came home with her favorite wine, made dinner, even played the playlist we used to dance to in the kitchen. She smiled, briefly, but when I leaned in to kiss her neck while she washed dishes, she stiffened. I backed off, not wanting to force anything. I asked gently, "Everything all right?" Her response was so casual it felt like a slap. "You always need something physical to feel connected, don't you?" I blinked, caught off guard. "I'm just trying to be close." "That's not wrong, is it?" She rolled her eyes. "It's not everything, you know. Intimacy isn't the only way to show love." I stared at her for a moment, unsure if I should push or let it go. I chose silence, but inside something twisted. Not because I was desperate for sex. That wasn't the issue. It was the dismissal. The way she said it, like I was some needy teenager begging for attention. Like the very thing that made us feel bonded, human, vulnerable, was suddenly beneath her. After that night, things shifted even more. She stopped initiating any kind of affection. No good morning kisses. No reaching for my hand on walks. When we went to bed, she'd turn off her lamp and immediately roll to the far side, earbuds in, back turned. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home, a ghost sitting at the dinner table with a woman who once called me her best friend. Still, I didn't explode. I tried to understand. I brought it up again one evening, calmly, without accusation. "Kelly," I said as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, "I feel like we're roommates lately, and that's not what I want. I miss how we used to be. I miss feeling connected." She sighed, long, drawn out, dramatic. "I knew you were going to bring this up again. Because it matters." She turned to face me then, arms crossed. "You act like just because we're not sleeping together every time you want to, the relationship is broken." "I didn't say that," I replied, keeping my voice level. "But you can't ignore me emotionally for weeks and expect everything to feel normal. We haven't touched in over a month, Kelly." "And so what?" she snapped. "You think that's the only thing that makes a relationship work? You need physical stuff constantly to feel loved?" I looked at her, really looked, and I saw it. That wall, that cold, prideful armor she'd built around herself. No vulnerability, no attempt to meet me halfway. Just this aloof energy, like caring had become optional. Then she said it. "Intimacy isn't everything, Ryan. Grow up." I didn't yell. I didn't get defensive. I just sat there, letting the weight of her words press down on my chest like concrete. Because in that moment, I realized something painfully simple. She didn't value what I gave. Not the emotional presence, not the effort, Not the way I held our life together behind the scenes, and certainly not the desire to keep our bond alive through closeness. And I also realized something else. If intimacy isn't everything to her, then maybe, just maybe, paying her bills doesn't have to be everything to me. That night, I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about all the little sacrifices I'd made without ever keeping score. The vacations I paid for, the groceries I stocked, the insurance I covered, the weekends I spent fixing things around the house, so she wouldn't have to worry. And for what? To be told that emotional and physical connection was somehow immature? To be made to feel like a burden for wanting what we once shared freely? No, I wasn't going to keep playing that role. Not anymore. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't slam doors or give ultimatums. But inside, I had made a choice. A quiet one. The kind that comes with absolute clarity and no turning back. And from that moment forward, everything started to change. When I stopped giving, I didn't announce it. No warnings, no ultimatums, no dramatic gestures. I simply mirrored what she'd been doing for months, pulling back without explanation. She was the one who first made intimacy conditional. So I followed her lead, only in a different way. Where she withheld warmth, I withheld comfort. Where she neglected connection, I stopped enabling dependency. And just like that, the energy shifted. It didn't happen overnight. At first, Rachel barely noticed the difference. She still moved through the house like she was the sun, and I was one of her quiet satellites, orbiting, existing, but never central. I'd wake up, shower, get dressed, and leave early. No goodbye kisses. No checking in. I simply stopped being available. But unlike her version of detachment, which came from disinterest, mine came from awakening. I had poured into her cup for years while mine sat bone dry. I was the one handling everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, car payments, weekend dinners, even her streaming subscriptions. All under the belief that love was about providing without keeping score. But I finally realized something. I wasn't her husband. I was her safety net. So I cut the net. One Thursday morning, while sipping coffee and reviewing expenses, I opened our shared banking app. I stared at the long list of recurring charges attached to her lifestyle, nail appointments, facial subscriptions, food deliveries I never touched, clothes she never wore out with me. I closed the app. That night, as she sat on the couch flipping through Netflix, I quietly pulled my card from the shared account. I didn't say a word, didn't send a message. I just stopped supporting someone who hadn't supported me in months. The following day, the first spark of tension arrived. She stood in the kitchen, eyebrows furrowed, card in hand. "Did the card get declined at Sephora?" she asked, confused. I looked at her calmly, leaning against the counter. "It did." "Why?" she asked, blinking fast. I paused before answering. "You remember last week when I tried to kiss you and you said, 'Intimacy isn't everything'?" She nodded slowly, unsure where I was going. "Well," I said, taking a sip of coffee, "neither is paying for things you don't appreciate." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. The silence between us wasn't angry. It was awakening. For her. That weekend, she wanted to order sushi. She casually said, "Can you Venmo me the usual?" "No," I said without emotion. She raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" I shrugged. "I'm just following your logic. You told me what matters to you in a relationship, and clearly, physical closeness isn't on your list. So I adjusted my priorities too." Her mouth hung open for a moment. Then she scoffed and walked away. But I could tell that hit differently. It wasn't about the money. It was about the realization that the man who once moved mountains for her had put them back in place. Over the next few days, the cracks widened. She went to the grocery store and came back annoyed. "The card didn't work again," she snapped. I nodded. "It won't." She glared. "So what now? You're just cutting me off." I didn't yell. I didn't lecture. I just looked her in the eyes and said something I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head, but never had the courage to say until now. I used to believe love meant giving without limits. But I've learned that when love isn't mutual, giving becomes enabling. And I won't fund my own emotional starvation anymore. She didn't respond. Just stood there, stunned, wounded, but too proud to admit it. That night, she tried a different approach. She wore a silky robe I hadn't seen in over a year, the same one she used to wear back when our bedroom was still alive with closeness. She walked into the room with soft eyes, brushed her fingers lightly over my shoulder, and said, "I've been thinking a lot about us." I didn't flinch. I didn't lean in. I stood up, looked at her gently, and said, "It's hard to believe that when your thinking only started after your comfort stopped." She blinked. I could see it, the understanding dawning. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a power play. It was the calm revenge of a man who had been ignored too long and finally chose himself. The following week, the silence between us changed tone. Before, it had been empty. Now it was heavy. She started doing things she hadn't in a long time, folding my laundry, texting me during the day, asking if I wanted to watch a movie with her. I didn't reject her coldly. I just didn't engage beyond civility. Because here's the thing. When a man stops showing affection, it's not because he suddenly stopped caring. It's because he realized he wasn't cared for. Rachel wasn't ready for that kind of clarity. 3 weeks in, her tone cracked. We were having dinner, something simple. She sat across from me, pushing food around her plate. Then she blurted, "Do you even love me anymore?" I looked up, met her eyes, and said calmly, "I loved you when you weren't loving me back. I loved you when I begged for connection and got nothing but excuses. I loved you through the drought, hoping you'd bring rain." She swallowed hard. "And now, I said, pausing to breathe, "now I love myself enough to stop begging." The next day, she asked if we could talk. She cried, apologized, said she'd been distracted, burned out, emotionally numb. All the words people use when they finally realize they've pushed someone too far. I listened, and I told her the truth. "I don't hate you, Rachel, but I no longer trust you with my heart. Not because you broke it with a single moment, but because you eroded it piece by piece with neglect." She wept into her hands. I didn't move to comfort her, because comfort, like affection, should never be one-sided. That weekend, she texted me from the other room, "Can we start over?" I didn't respond, not to be cruel, but because I had already started over in silence, in strength, and in the decision to stop giving where I was only being taken from. And from that moment on, she understood what she'd truly lost. Some people don't understand the damage they caused until they're staring at the empty space you used to fill. Rachel wasn't a bad woman. She wasn't cruel, violent, or hateful. But she made one fundamental mistake. She thought love was a given. She treated emotional distance like a temporary pause, not realizing that affection, once pushed away enough times, stops coming back. She believed I'd always be there, loving, forgiving, funding, until I wasn't. After I cut the financial support, her rhythm cracked. The small luxuries she'd grown used to vanished. Shopping sprees were now budgets. Takeout turned into frozen dinners, and spa appointments turned into home treatments. But that wasn't what broke her. It was the quiet shift in power, the realization that I no longer needed her, and more than that, I no longer wanted to fix what she had broken. Her apologies began arriving daily. Sticky notes on my laptop with "You're right. I was wrong." Text messages in the middle of the night that read, "I miss how you used to hold me." A handwritten letter she left on my pillow saying, "I didn't realize how much I relied on your presence and your patience." I read them, every single one, but none of them changed what I had already accepted deep inside. The woman I fell in love with had stopped loving me long ago, and only now, when I stopped serving her, did she want to remember how to feel again. One Saturday morning, she made my favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with almond butter. It used to be a Saturday ritual for us in the early days. I walked into the kitchen, smelled the food, and saw her standing there, apron on, hopeful. "Morning," she said gently. I nodded. "Morning. I thought maybe we could sit down, eat together." Like before, I took a deep breath. "Thank you, but I already have plans." The disappointment in her face was loud, but I had stopped softening my boundaries just to keep her comfortable. That afternoon, I went to see a friend, a woman I'd met through work. Nothing romantic, just coffee and conversation. But for the first time in months, I felt seen again. Heard. Respected. When I got home later that night, Rachel was waiting in the living room, red-eyed. "Were you with someone?" she asked, voice trembling. I didn't play games. "Yes, a friend." She bit her lip. A woman. Yes. She nodded slowly. So that's where we are now. I'm not yours to account to anymore, I said calmly. You forfeited that position when you stopped showing up. Her tears came fast, this time uncontrollable. She collapsed onto the couch and whispered, I never thought you'd actually leave me. And there it was, the truth behind all the panic. She never believed I'd follow through. Not after everything I had endured. Not after how many times I bit my tongue, stayed up at night wondering where I went wrong, begged her with my silence to notice me. She assumed my loyalty would override my self-respect forever. But even the most loyal heart has a threshold. The next day, she asked if we could take a walk, like we used to. We walked 2 blocks in silence before she stopped under a tree near the old bookstore we loved. I took you for granted, she said, eyes on the pavement. I thought you'd always be there, no matter what. I thought that's what love was. I looked at her, not with anger, but sadness. You confused endurance with weakness, I said. You thought because I stayed through the silence, through the rejections, through the cold nights, that I had no limit. I was wrong, she whispered. Yes, you were. She reached for my hand, instinctively, like muscle memory. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. I want to fix us, she said. I'll do anything. I don't want to lose you. I sighed. You didn't lose me today, Rachel. You lost me slowly. You lost me every time I leaned in and you pulled away. Every time I tried to connect and you treated me like a burden. You lost me the moment you made me feel foolish for wanting what used to be normal. But I'm here now, trying. I know, I said, and I see it, but it's too late. She stared at me, eyes wide. So that's it. It has to be. She shook her head, tears falling. Please don't do this. I love you. No, Rachel, I said softly. You love the version of me who gave without limit, who stayed even when staying hurt. But that version of me doesn't exist anymore. There was nothing cruel in my voice, just truth. I moved out that following week, packed my things slowly, respectfully. I didn't leave a mess. I didn't slam the door. I left my key on the kitchen counter and walked away with nothing but a suitcase and peace. And still, she called. The first voicemail came 2 days later. I can't sleep. I feel like a part of me is missing. Then a text. I've been going to therapy. I'm really trying. Please don't shut me out forever. But the thing about regret is that it doesn't rewind time. It doesn't undo the silence, the distance, the cold months of pretending your partner is invisible. She begged me to stay the moment I stopped funding her comfort. But by then, I was no longer trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see me. A month later, I saw her at the grocery store. She looked thinner, quieter. Not broken, just changed. She walked up to me slowly, unsure. Hey, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Hi, you look good, she said. Thanks. We stood there for a second. Then she said, do you think you'll ever come back? I paused, genuinely thought about it, then said no. But I hope you find peace. She nodded, eyes glistening. I hope you're happy. I am, I replied. Finally. And I meant it, because I had learned something valuable. Love is not about how much you can give. It's about what's returned. And when someone tells you intimacy isn't everything, what they're really saying is your needs don't matter. So I said, neither is paying your bills. And I walked, not out of revenge, but because healing is sometimes quiet and peace doesn't need permission.